Snowflake is finally in, by the way. It's way better than
All right, hey, it's time for our Q&A. If you want to come on over, if you can't hear it, this is your chance. We're going to make an announcement, or two, or three, or something, a whole bunch, and then we're going to do a little bit of Q&A with whoever wants to be there. So if you can't hear, you might want to kind of come up for the next few minutes. Okay.
I want to thank everyone for coming out, and I especially want to thank everyone for their support this year and all the previous years. SSG is really grateful for everyone who plays all of our games, and we hope we can bring you as much joy as possible.
Thank you. Seriously, thank you all. Thank you all for coming out tonight. We really appreciate it.
I wanted to talk a little bit about the coming year. I'll start with DDO because I've already done the producer's letter, and then go into Lotro and talk about some of the stuff that will be in the producer's letter in the coming 2 weeks once we get translations. So for DDO, we announced that we're going to be doing an expansion at the end of the year, which is takes place in the Feywild. So there will be a lot of color and strange creatures and raids and content, so we're excited about that. We just launched our hardcore season 2 with a lot of changes and a new class, which was Alchemist. So the Alchemist seems to be going well. We've been watching all of the players playing them. I want to work on my Alchemist Acrobat, so take that as you will. And we have another update coming soon as well, and the Feywild will include the shifter race, which will be very, we're excited to do it. Our animators are excited to animate it. We think it'll be cool for everybody. And then I want to talk a little bit about Lotro, since I haven't done the producer's letter yet, because we're waiting. So the big thing we're excited about in Lotro is the wedding. It's going to take place this year between Aragorn and Arwen. And that will continue the storyline. It'll happen sometime in the summer, and there'll be a lot of festivities and activities around that. So we're excited about that. We're also starting a theme of orcs versus dwarves, and we're starting a new storyline called The Legacy of Durin and the Trial of the Dwarves. And that storyline is going to start in our next update, and it will continue all the way through the year into a 2 big updates, and then continue through to a Gundabad themed expansion in the spring.
Ooh.
So that'll be really cool.
There goes half of my questions on that.
In the fall, we're doing kind of a new kind of event and update, and part of it will be endgame, but part of it will be the people coming to help Durin with a lot of content that will scale to your level, called missions. And so one of the reasons that we haven't done the producer's letter is that we're still designing that, but we want to help incorporate all of the players that may not be running against endgame or have alts that they want to play. I think that one of the things we've seen is we've put a lot of endgame content out, but there are a lot of players that like doing festivals and engaging in the content that aren't strictly endgame. So this sort of kind of content is going to help them experience new things as well, so they can do things with the current players and not always feel like they're behind. So that the hold up on the producer's letter is I wanted to get more information about that kind of event before I actually did it, and so you should be seeing the producer's letter in the next couple weeks. So those are some of the fun things that we have coming. We're all excited about the wedding. Certainly, it's a big story beat, and that should be very cool.
Yeah.
In case you wonder what that pick is, that's a work in progress, most of the way done for the spring mount.
So given that, I want to open up to any questions that I might be able to answer or can answer without marketing coming up behind me and sapping me.
Rob, so you want to talk about the Rohan housing thing?
Sorry, I didn't mean to freak you out with that.
So one of the things that we're going to do is do Rohan housing. Housing is coming to Rohan, and one of the cool things about this is that you'll be able to get stables and show your favorite mounts.
Woo!
I can finally say it. Horses!
So our engineers have been working hard on that, so that's really cool. And that should be coming out when the legendary server does Helm's Deep. So
Nice.
those things will coincide. Is that cathartic? Like, are you happy now?
I'm happy now, Rob. Thank you. I can finally say it. It's been like.
Yes, sir.
Can you say anything else on? You mentioned about going past beyond level 30. Can you say anything else on that?
What is the specific question on it?
Like, is it actual level raising, or is it just like some other like additional enhancement trees or something?
No. We're going to start by going to level 31, and eventually over the course of the expansions in coming years, we'll go all the way up to level 40.
Awesome.
Ooh,
Thank you.
level.
Not right away.
Okay. Yeah.
Like the Feywild will bring you, because we want to make sure there's enough content for everyone. So the Feywild will be 2, maybe 3 levels. We're going to have to play through to see to make sure the pacing is good on that.
All right.
Are there any other questions?
Come on, don't be shy. This is your chance.
So,
Yep.
so that,
Yes.
okay, so some update for Lotro will be the Aragorn one getting married. Is there going to be any new landscape for that, or maybe like an overall Minas Tirith, or any new regions with that? Or?
Well, one of the things that's coming up is we're going to be doing more landscape content before that, and we're going to be in an update called the Mists of the Wilderlands. The update may change, so the update name, but I think that's what we're going to go with, and that will cover the Floodfells and that area. And part of the idea is that we're going to be doing a lot of the landscape leading up to next year when we do Gundabad. So like the story will take you along those, and then the War of Three Peaks should have some landscape in addition to that, and then leading into next year. Does that answer your question? Whereas the wedding will bring us back, obviously, to the main city.
Actually, I did have like one other question. Is that Minas Tirith after battle still has all that wreckage and wreck stuff? Are we going to release like a fixed Minas Tirith?
That I'm not going to answer. You'll have to see during the wedding what they've done with Minas Tirith to decorate it.
What about Archit?
Sorry, what was the question?
What about Archit?
Redoing
Archit for 14 years.
Archit has a hard time. I don't know that it's time yet for the movers to get that far.
Send the Rohirrim builders up to Archit. They're fun.
Any other questions? Yes.
DDO Feywild expansion, can you say anything about what the Feywild areas will be, or if we'll see some Feywild versions of areas we're familiar with already?
The Feywild area will be completely new and will take place, and since we haven't really been in the Feywild proper, it should be all new landscape. Like some of the things that I've seen from the art, and I don't want to reveal too much, is like yes. I was just gonna say that is like a completely new castle area that will happen in there. Because the Feywild, it's always twilight, and so when you go in there, it will be all new content. Like they're redesigning like trees and how we're gonna use color and what the skybox will be and what the vegetation is like there. So there should be, when you walk in, it should be a big deal in terms of that.
We can say one more thing about Feywild.
Rainbows!
That better not be a 100 gold roll, damn it.
Unicorns!
Does that that answer your question? Are there any other questions? Yes, sir. I would love to do psionics. We just did Alchemists, so we've done classes. But if we did psionics, I would love to do something with the astral plane, the Githyanki, and do psionics. That's one of my favorite. So the 8 ball, the magic 8 ball says maybe. Any other questions?
Are there plans to move off of the map in Lotro? It seems like a lot of space has been covered. You could be moving east. Is there any?
Absolutely. Like when the story people are talking, they really would love to go and visit Ambar or Rune, for instance. And our longer term plans will bring us into areas such as that. So we're definitely excited to do that. One of the things that we want to do is one of the things we're very proud of in Lotro is that it has such a complete and unbelievable 3D representation of Middle-earth. It's sort of like a crown jewel. So we want to make sure as we go through that all of the areas are covered and seen contiguous so you can travel anywhere in Middle-earth and then we'll move out. So our priority a little bit is filling in the areas that we may not have filled in before to bring that experience to life so people can really experience that landscape, the feeling of riding through. Does that make sense? Yes?
Is the Shire getting scoured?
Eventually, we'd like to cover all of the story points, but maybe not in a way that someone would think.
Maybe. You will hear this from me many times throughout many channels, and the answer is almost always maybe. Perhaps.
I can feel them saying, "Don't say anything, Rob. Don't do it."
I'm basically the Aya Strongman over here.
Are there any other questions?
Yeah.
Oh, we got one behind you here.
Behind you.
The always contentious server merging. for
Yes.
DDO. Any thoughts on it?
So what we'd like to do for DDO is eventually have some mega servers and start fresh mega servers that people can move over to. And that way, not only will the players be able to play together, but it will free up a lot of the old names that are tied up.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? So we won't keep any of our servers. We'll keep them and have people transfer to the mega servers so they can all play together. The holdup right now is the tech one. We can't move over the guilds.
I understand there's a lot of it.
Yeah, we actually, and there's some back end, there's a lot of back end work to do to make a server that's big enough to fit more players in terms of that. So our long-term goal would be to address that problem once we have the back end, because we've been doing a lot of back end infrastructure work, and now that we're past some of that, we can move on to things like guild transfer. And once we have guild transfer, we'll be comfortable opening up mega servers that have the players sort of be able to consolidate to the server they want, and then be able to take, old names of people who haven't played for a while will be freed up as people are coming into fresh new servers.
Excellent, thank you.
Do you have any plans to make any more content west of Selendim at all? Like more in that area?
Yeah, I mean, once
Linden.
we finish all of the map that we have now, we want to expand out sort of in all directions.
Oh wow.
Question about the server, mega servers. Will those, transferring over, will that be free? That's just like hardcore over? Okay.
Well, I mean, sort of like, if we're going to make mega servers and force everyone to consolidate, we're obviously not going to.
Okay, just making sure.
Yeah, because what we want to do is we want to have people move over as they can, and then have the other servers be available for you to transfer, but not to play, if that makes sense.
So like Lotro did in 2015.
Yes, except Lotro didn't have mega servers. Lotro actually
Saved some
had
servers,
people
but
go into existing servers, which caused name issues. This would be a little different because everyone would be on equal footing because it's a fresh server, and also the database would start fresh, which means that only the people that came over or moved would be in the database, so you wouldn't have the history. You'd have the character history obviously would come over, but the historical characters wouldn't be there. So we'll be able to sort of track the expansion of it much better than doing it with existing servers. That's why we kind of want to take that tack. But again, longer term, because the guild transfer and the transfer of other account items is a significant technical hurdle for us to overcome. Yes.
Are there plans to do a similar, once you get over the guild kinship problems, are there plans to do a similar optional transfer for Lotro as well? For a Mega server?
For Lotro, we already have one legendary server, and we'd like to do another with some different rules to excite the players. And so our strategy there is not to have a mega server where we force the players to move again, but rather to provide these new experiences for them if they want to go on. Like, we've been discussing how can we excite players about a server that might play a little differently, or have a different set of rules, or that kind of stuff. Because we're concentrating on that in Lotro, and because we've already done a server merge, it isn't in the forefront to address that problem in Lotro right now. Are there any other questions? Yes.
Any plans for DDO housing?
DDO housing, yes, Bill?
We'd love to do a personal housing in DDO. We just have to be careful with the instances.
Maybe.
Right now we end up doing guild housing, and so the idea for DDO housing is if we brought a DDO personal housing, how would it sort of feed back into the game? And we've discussed a lot of options for doing that and have customization. The thing we have to be careful of is that the guild housing is limited because there's only one per guild, but it does take a lot of data. And we want to make sure that if you try to make housing for every single character, that our servers can support that. If that makes sense. But I personally would love to do that.
We've seen the post about Sharn apartments, high-rise apartments. Seen those, so we're in discussion. It's a long discussion. So the answer is, per usual, maybe.
Have you guys per account instead of per character that is more feasible?
Maybe. It depends on how it's implemented and how much data each house would end up taking up. And since we haven't gone through the back end design of that, I can't answer that question currently because it depends on how it's implemented. The cooler it is, the harder it is for the server to support it. Like everything in video games. So, yes.
Is there any plans for a guild rework?
We would love to extend sort of like what guilds can do for both games, actually. Have more guild festivals and guild activities other than the high-end group activity. Like, we have high-end dungeons and high-end raids, but we'd like more expanded ways for guilds to use. For instance, it's fun to have a guild-related event and for everybody to contribute to the leveling of the guild.
Right.
And we'd love to do that without and give things for the guilds to sort of go after in terms of like, hey, what can the guilds work together to get in terms of like how the game is played and all of that. So yes, we definitely would love to do that.
Because not all guilds and kinships play the same.
Yeah.
Right? So that's a very broad question we have to answer before we move forward. So always we appreciate feedback about how your guild and kinship plays. So definitely tell us.
You're taking some work off of me. Thank you. All right. Any other questions? Yes. Sorry?
Guild TR.
Oh God.
Wow. I really like that.
Okay. Maybe.
We want to be careful because we would love the guilds to work towards things, but we already have a lot of stat sort of escalation. So you have to be careful if the guild TR can give buffs to everyone, then we just want to make sure that the game can sort of support that. But I think that that would be fun because it would give the guild a constant thing to work towards, and we're all for that. So
That's going to be a conversation.
any other questions?
Over here.
Oh, yes.
Are there going to be any changes to legendary weapons coming up?
Indeed, we're going to have short-term changes to some better ways to earn scrolls high level, and then a revamp for legendary items that will make them. You'll be able to take your legendary item and when you want, transfer it to new system, and the new system is going to be more of an essence-based legendary item is our current plan. I don't want to say too much about it because we're still working on it, and sometimes when you look at the tech, you have to kind of rethink what you're doing, so I don't want to go into details, but I'm hoping to get that out this year. It's just with our aggressive content leading up to another expansion, I just want to make sure that people...
Right.
I don't want to promise it when it's not on the, when we haven't announced it on the schedule yet. But that's forefront in our mind. Last year, we started with Virtues and then rolled into the expansion. And we always knew that once the Virtues were revamped, that we would go into legendary items.
What we want to avoid is all the work that you put into your current legendary weapons does not go away, right? We understand that a lot of time and effort has been put into them, and we don't want to discount that. We don't want you to feel like you lost anything about that.
So whatever you put into your current legendary weapons would somehow translate to rolling into the new ones, and that versioning tech, when you bring it forth and change it into a new one, has to be really smooth and feel good, because we don't want people being like, oh my god, like this is terrible.
Yeah.
Like we really want it to feel good that you do that and still have ways of sort of advancing. Good question. Any other questions? Awesome. Well, I'm glad that you all came out. It's really great to see everybody, and I thank you for supporting our games. If anyone has any other questions for me as I'm roaming around, feel free to come up and say hi, and thanks very much. I'll hand it back to Cordova.
Hey, thanks. Can we just do a little round of applause, please? All right, so really the rest of the time here is a chance to chat with people. Don't be shy if you feel like taking some pics. I bet Sev likes having his picture taken. I think that's true.
I hope so. I was.
And otherwise, have a good night. Be safe, and thanks for being here.